Ken and Jerry were brothers, but their similarities ended there. Born into a life of privilege, they walked different paths. Ken, the elder, was consumed by their wealth. He believed their family's fortune made them superior. Jerry, on the other hand, possessed a kind heart. He treated everyone with respect, regardless of their social standing. This difference was especially evident in their interactions with the family's domestic staff. Jerry would engage the staff in friendly conversation, always grateful for their hard work. He saw them as individuals, not just employees. Ken, however, viewed them with disdain. He believed they were beneath him, mere servants to cater to his every whim. Their contrasting characters created a palpable tension in the household. The staff adored Jerry, drawn to his genuine warmth and appreciation. They dreaded Ken's presence, his arrogance hanging heavy in the air. He never missed an opportunity to belittle them. His words dripping with a sense of entitlement he seemed to wear like a badge of honor. Little did he know, life had a harsh lesson in store for him. Ken reveled in their wealth. He loved expensive cars, designer clothes, and extravagant parties. His days were spent indulging in lavish pursuits. There was nothing he couldn't have, nothing he couldn't buy. This constant gratification fueled his sense of superiority. He believed money was the measure of a man, and he was overflowing with it. The staff bore the brunt of his arrogance. He would bark orders at them, never bothering to learn their names. He saw them as invisible hands, there to serve him, and nothing more. He would complain about insignificant matters, his voice laced with a condescending tone that made them feel small. He never considered their feelings, their dignity. In his mind, they were fortunate to serve him. He took pleasure in reminding them of their place. He would leave his belongings strewn across the floor, expecting them to clean up after him without a word. He would demand meals at odd hours, expecting them to cater to his every whim. The staff, bound by their duties, endured his behavior with quiet resentment. One night, fueled by arrogance and alcohol, Ken's world came crashing down. He was returning from a party, his expensive sports car roaring through the quiet streets. The music blared, his senses dulled by the expensive liquor he had consumed. He felt invincible, above the law, above consequences. But fate had other plans. As he sped down a winding road, his car skidded on a patch of wet asphalt. The world spun violently as his car veered off the road, crashing into a row of trees. The impact was deafening, the metal frame of the car twisting and contorting around him. He felt a searing pain shoot through his legs, his vision blurring at the edges. As he drifted in and out of consciousness, the gravity of the situation began to sink in. His life of luxury, of reckless abandon was over. When he woke up in the hospital, the sterile white walls seemed to mock his previous life. The doctor informed him that the damage to his legs was irreparable. He would never walk again. The news hit him like a ton of bricks, shattering his carefully constructed world. His life, once filled with endless possibilities, now felt limited, defined by his disability. He was trapped in a prison of his own making, his arrogance replaced by a suffocating fear. Anger consumed Ken. He lashed out at the nurses, the doctors, anyone within earshot. He blamed them for his misfortune, refusing to acknowledge his own role in the accident. He was furious at the world for taking away his perfect life. His sense of entitlement morphed into a bitter resentment. He couldn't comprehend why this was happening to him, a man who seemingly had it all. His anger extended to his family. He pushed away his parents, his siblings, anyone who tried to comfort him. He couldn't bear to see the pity in their eyes, the unspoken judgment behind their words. He felt like a burden, a constant reminder of his own recklessness. The staff, once the target of his scorn, now evoked a different kind of fear in him. He needed them now more than ever, but his pride prevented him from asking for help. He couldn't bear the thought of being vulnerable in front of them, the people he had treated with such disdain. So he withdrew further into himself, isolating himself from the world he once ruled. Section 5. The weight of dependence. As days turned into weeks, the reality of his situation set in. The staff who had always been at his beck and call were no longer at his disposal. Jerry, who had always been there for him despite their differences, had finally reached his limit. He could no longer bear to witness his brother's self-destruction. With a heavy heart, Jerry moved out, leaving Ken to face the consequences of his actions alone. The once bustling mansion became a prison of silence. Ken was trapped, his world reduced to the confines of his room. He couldn't even perform the simplest of tasks. Getting out of bed, getting dressed, even eating became monumental challenges. He was completely dependent on others, a stark contrast to his previously independent life. Every task, every request for help was a painful reminder of his helplessness. The silence of the house was deafening, amplifying his loneliness. He yearned for someone to talk to, someone to ease his burden, but his past actions had driven everyone away. He was alone, consumed by regret and self-pity. Section 6. A glimmer of understanding. Loneliness has a way of stripping away pretense, of revealing our true selves. In the quiet solitude of his days, Ken was forced to confront his own reflection. He saw not the charming, wealthy young man, but a bitter, broken shell of a person. The weight of his actions pressed down on him, suffocating him with guilt and shame. He realized, perhaps for the first time, the true cost of his arrogance. He thought about the staff, the people he had treated with such disdain. He remembered their faces, their names, which he had never bothered to learn, now surfacing in his memory with painful clarity. He recalled their kindness, their quiet dignity in the face of his insults. They had been the ones who kept the house running, who had catered to his every whim, and he had repaid their hard work with cruelty. He thought about Jerry, his kind, compassionate brother. Jerry, who had always seen the good in everyone, who had tried to bridge the gap between Ken and the rest of the world. Ken had pushed him away, blinded by his own self-importance. He had taken Jerry's love for granted, assuming it would always be there. Now, surrounded by the emptiness he had created, he realized the depth of his loss. Section 7. Reaching out for redemption. Desperation clawed at Ken. He knew he had to make amends, to seek forgiveness for the pain he had caused. He had to start somewhere, and the first step was acknowledging his mistakes. He had been wrong, terribly wrong, to treat people with such disrespect. His wealth, his social standing meant nothing in the face of basic human decency. He reached out to Jerry, his voice trembling with a mix of shame and hope. He confessed his mistakes, his voice cracking with emotion. He spoke of his regret, his newfound understanding of the pain he had inflicted. He asked for forgiveness, not expecting it, but hoping against hope that his brother would understand. He knew he also owed the staff an apology. He had treated them poorly, and he wanted to make things right. He contacted the agency, his voice thick with remorse. He asked for another chance, a chance to show them that he had changed. He offered them a raise, better working conditions, anything to show his sincerity. Section 8. The return of kindness. To Ken's surprise, his apology was met with compassion. Jerry, his voice filled with concern, assured him that he was not beyond redemption. He had missed his brother, had worried about him despite everything. He promised to visit soon to help him through this difficult time. The staff, too, responded with unexpected grace. They had seen Ken at his worst, had borne the brunt of his arrogance, but they had also glimpsed his vulnerability, his desperation in the aftermath of the accident. They were willing to give him another chance to see if his change was genuine. One by one, they returned to the mansion, their presence filling the house with a warmth that had been missing for so long. They treated him with kindness, their actions speaking louder than words. They helped him with his daily tasks, their patience never wavering, their compassion never faltering. Section 9. A lesson learned, humility found. Life had dealt Ken a harsh hand, but it had also given him a precious gift, the gift of humility. He had learned that true wealth lay not in material possessions, but in the kindness we shared, the connections we forged with others. He had discovered that everyone, regardless of their social standing, deserved to be treated with respect. He spent his days learning to navigate his new reality, his heart filled with gratitude for the people who had shown him compassion. He treated the staff with respect, addressing them by name, engaging them in conversations. He listened to their stories, their hopes and dreams, recognizing their humanity. He was no longer the arrogant, entitled young man, but a humbled soul, grateful for the second chance he had been given. His journey from arrogance to humility was long and arduous, paved with pain and regret. But it had also been a journey of self-discovery, of learning to appreciate the simple joys in life. He had lost his legs, but he had gained something far more valuable, a compassionate heart.